Zipper rolls out to the right, pitches off to Taylor, and Taylor's to the 20, down to the 15, down to the 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Billy Taylor scored a touchdown from 21 yards out. The crowd goes berserk. It was November 22nd, 1969. That they came to Barry, Michigan, all dressed in maize and blue. The words were said, the prayers were read, and everybody cried. But when they closed the coffin, there was someone else inside. Oh, they came to Barry, Michigan, but Michigan wasn't dead. And when the game was over, it was someone else instead. 11 Michigan Wolverines put on the gloves of gray, and as the organ played the victors, they laid Woody Hayes away. Under center is Wangler at the 45. He goes back. He's looking for a receiver. He throws downfield to Carter. Who's got it better than us? Nobody!
Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue, and welcome to our Michigan Game Day show for this week. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Did the second half against Rutgers make you nervous? Well, buckle up. This Saturday will be 10 times as nerve-wracking. With us in just a moment will be one of our favorite guests, Nick Baumgardner from The Athletic. First, my view from Section 17 to get us started. As a longtime Michigan fan, I'm always amazed what football season does to the emotions of otherwise rational people. After the first 3 weeks, I was hearing things like, "We're back. Running the football like this is what we need to do. Our defense is fast," etc., etc. Well, that would be great if the season was over after 3 weeks. It's not, though. Rutgers visited the Big House and slapped a reminder on all Michigan fans, you aren't as good as you looked the first 3 weeks. And they're right. The days of running the football down teams' throats ended long ago. It's still important to run the ball, but you have to at least have a decent passing game if you want to be taken seriously. Now, I'm not saying we should press the panic button after the Rutgers game, but we have to be honest and rational about a few things. Cade McNamara needs to be better. Josh Gaddis and Jim need to put him in a position to be better. And our defense, it's going to be bend but don't break the entire year. After 4 games, in many ways, it is what it is. What it is this Saturday is a trip to Madison where we haven't won in about 20 years. You would be foolish to assume that will change this Saturday. Wisconsin has a defensive line that is north of elite. Ask the 2 Notre Dame quarterbacks in rehab this week if Wisconsin can play. This is the same Badgers team that ran 96 plays against number 4 Penn State and dominated every aspect of the game but the scoreboard. What I'm trying to say is, throw out the record. The Badgers are a wounded animal, and they need a win on Saturday. For us, it's also a huge game. Sooner or later, we need to win a big road game. This is a litmus test for Michigan football in 2021. My guest today says we can't run the football down Wisconsin's throat. We cannot abandon the running game either, but we have to use our speed on the perimeter and put Cade in the position to be successful. With us today is Nick Baumgardner from The Athletic, here on The Michigan Man, so stay with us. Here with us on our Game Day segment this week to take a look back at the Rutgers game this weekend and ahead to a big road trip to Wisconsin on Saturday is Nick Baumgardner from The Athletic. Nick, great to have you back with us.
Good to be with you, Mike, as always.
Well, Nick, it was a pretty wild weekend in college football across the landscape, and with the Michigan game, I guess there's still a lot to unpack, especially if you communicate with fans since Saturday.
Yeah, right.
Let's start with the question and the complaint and basically all of my email. It's about Cade McNamara. I mean, he was 8 of 11 in the first half. Then in the second half, he did look unsettled. I thought he had happy feet, and there was not really any pressure in the pocket. So what do you make of his play?
Yeah, I know. I think that this is an interesting conversation because for years here at Michigan, I don't know what to call it, but like this has happened with every quarterback Harbaugh's had, right? You know, their offenses, you know, no matter what the style is with Jim Harbaugh, it's always going to probably default at, you know, conservative, right? That's just how he is as a coach. But at the same time, you know, you can have an effective passing game with a conservative offense, but the quarterback has to be really diligent with his reads and his throws. And I think that McNamara is making a good handful of them, but there's also a good handful that he's not. And, like, every error he makes in this situation is going to be magnified. And I don't think it's out of bounds to say he needs to be better. I mean, like, there were some throws in the second half, and granted, they didn't, you know, I think at one point earlier in the midway through the fourth quarter or early in the fourth quarter, they'd only run like 6 plays offensively in the second half because Rutgers, you know, the defense couldn't get off the field for Michigan. But there were some of those reads where, I thought he's rushed. He's trying to make too much of a throw, you know, because exactly that situation, right? Like the crowd's groaning a little bit. Your defense can't get off the field. I think he was trying to get a lot back. And it's like if you just kind of go through what you're doing there, check the ball down, get it to a guy in space, let him run, you know, you're going to get a lot of free yards. But when Michigan gets into trouble, it's when they want to fall into this drop-back pass game on, like, first down. They don't really have much play action to speak of. And if they're going to ask, you know, McNamara to make reads down the field and not check the ball down to guys in space, you know, the margins are going to be tough and you're going to get what we saw. So they've got to figure out a better way to, you know, and I think that's on the sideline too. McNamara's got to be better with his throws and his reads, and Gaddis and those guys on the sideline have got to be better with getting him in positions and situations where he's more comfortable, period. You know, and that's something they've all got to work on because, Mike, we all know this. They've got to be better with the pass game in the Big Ten, or this is going to end the exact same way that we've always seen it. There's no other, and it's not because the offensive line is a fraud or anything else. It's because teams are just going to load up and take it away, and it is what it is, and we've seen this 100 times.
I think we've all experienced quickly after a very good start, 3-0. The fan base can switch gears on you when you don't have a good day. I thought it was interesting, though. Even analysts do the same. I was watching the game on tape just to see how it looked, and I thought it was interesting. Todd Blackledge said in the first half of the game that, you know, I'm not worried about Cade. I've seen enough to know he can make the throws when necessary. Then in the second half, he turned around and said, hey, he looks confused and skittish. That's a quick turnaround as far as analyzing the kid. But overall, from someone who's around the program as many years as you've been, is this the kind of thing that raises a red flag, or you just say, hey, you've got to stick with this kid and see where it goes?
I think it's the latter. I think it's you stick with it and see where it goes, but you stick with it and you see where it goes, but you don't, like, put your blinders on and say, like, we're going to stick with it forever and see what happens no matter what, right? And I think in the past, I do think in the early years here, and I don't know, Harbaugh's changed over time, but, you know, Jim's thinking forever with quarterbacks, I think, and he's never really said this, but I think just deep down, you know, he played the position, right, forever. And I think his big thing with coaches was, you've got to trust me. I have to be able as a quarterback to look over there and know that my coach, my play caller, my head coach, whatever, trusts me. That if I make a mistake or I screw something up, he's not going to just rip me out of here and screw me and bench me. And I think sometimes Jim gets over protective in some of those cases, and I understand why he would do that, but I also think that it's fine to hold your quarterback to a little bit of a higher standard with, hey, man, we're not asking you to reinvent the wheel. We're not asking you to throw the ball 40 times a game. We are asking you to make, like, 17 clean reads, and you're not doing it. You're making 12. We need 5 more. And I think that those are the type of conversations that you have here. It's not that you're dumping on him or saying that he's terrible or whatever, or that McCarthy needs to come in because he would immediately be better, because I don't know that that's true.
Mm-hmm.
The conversation needs to be more about your reads, being comfortable with those, and just sticking with it. And, I think Cade McNamara can handle that type of criticism. I don't think he's the type of kid that would crumble under it, frankly. And I'm interested to see where it goes, because I think that there are things they can fix with him, and I think they need to acknowledge those privately and fix them, and not just act like they're not there, right? And I think that this will be a big test for them as they go forward.
Well, those first two drives on Saturday were precision-like. I guess you could even call the first drive boring.
Mm-hmm.
Then in the second quarter, Michigan started having problems moving the ball late in the second quarter again. Did Rutgers make any noticeable adjustments you saw that, virtually eliminated the rushing attack?
Well, they definitely loaded up. I mean, it was one of those things where early on in the game, in the first drive especially, Michigan ran the ball. I think it was like a 17-play drive. They probably ran it 13 or 14 of those 17, if not more. And Rutgers is clearly, crowding around the line. But as the game wore on, as you expected, they did more to sort of clutter the box and clutter the middle. And, I don't think Michigan suddenly stopped blocking it. I think it became a situation where there were too many guys inside for them to block, or it would be something where it was like 8-on-8. And when you're blocking 8-on-8, it's really hard to do.
Yeah.
And especially when you're running between the tackles. And I think that they got away from the edge stuff. We saw that, I kind of joked on Twitter. There was a massive ovation from the crowd. You probably heard that, Mike, late in the game when they hit the edge and finally got a first down in the fourth quarter. And it was like, where has that been? Why have, and they do that. They sort of, and Harbaugh got asked after the game, are you guys falling in love with your stuff again? And I think he took it the wrong way. And I think he took that to mean, are you falling in love with your stuff? Are guys getting cocky or whatever? And that's not what I don't think what the question was. I think the question is, are you falling in love with your ability to just grind on people and just be we'll just grind it out here. We'll just grind out it. We can do it. We've got the line to no, sometimes take the free stuff on the outside, take the easy yards, make it easier on yourself. I think that's still part of the process for Harbaugh and Gaddis and Sharon Moore and all of these guys, as a play calling contingent, fight against your sort of maybe instinct to just, hey, we've got great linemen, let's just lean in here and get it. If we can't get a yard here, screw it, right? No, make it easier on yourself. There's yards to be had otherwise. And I think that those are things that sometimes they get caught. And I think it's pull back, look at everything again. Don't panic. You're 4-0 and start, kind of go at it that way. And so far, Mike, I think that's sort of what we've seen. We don't have evidence to the contrary, so I guess we'll see how it goes this week.
Well, it didn't take long, again, for the fans after the game that I talked to start questioning the play calling of Josh Gaddis. Not so much in the first half. Hey, when everything works, you don't question it.
Right.
But in the second half, when Michigan had those multiple 3-and-out series, did the play calling at that point seem odd to you?
It was a little bit yes and a little bit no. I thought they were a little bit of a catch-22 because and it wasn't a play calling for me. It was more the structure of the game plan, because I think that the defense couldn't get off the field. You didn't get the ball in the third quarter until there was 6 minutes left. You knew that was probably going to be the case, I would assume, for most of the second half, because Rutgers' plan, and everyone knows Schiano. He's a game plan. He's going to measure the game, and he's going to try to give his team the best chance to win, which is exactly what he did. Let's grind the clock, shorten the game, see if we can do something here. So if you're Michigan in that situation, I think your counter needed to be maybe trying some stuff that we haven't seen, and I think that's probably the problem. There were yards to be had on the edge. There were yards to be had on a couple quarterback keeps, and they're not doing it. And it's if you're going to just keep trying to crack the ball in there against some of these Big Ten teams that are moderately decent in the middle of their defense, it's going to be hard. You're asking a lot of your offensive line, and it's when you're putting too much on the plate of those guys in the middle, and we're all standing there wondering, why is A.J. Henning not touching the ball? Why is Corum not touching the ball? Why are these guys on the edge not doing? That's what it is. And to me, that's more game plan stuff than it is play calling in the moment. To me, that's more being comfortable with, the playmakers on your team. And I think that's something for Michigan too. Hey, you clearly trust the front, right? They clearly trust the offensive line. Trust A.J. Henning a little bit more. Let's see what happens, right? Let's see if he surprises you, right? And I think that those are things that, for Harbaugh, I think that's still a process. I think it's default of trusting older players who've proven it over and over and over again, and being wary about taking a chance maybe on a younger kid who's talented and he knows he's talented, but it's like, do I trust him here? Well, sometimes you can't find out until you put him out there and let him, and see what happens. And I think that there are days where I wonder, like, you need to do more of that. We need to see more of Henning. Why is he not getting like 10 touches a game? What's happening here? Like, those are the things that I think people have fair questions about. And those are questions that Gaddis, I think, probably is internalizing and, thinking about right now, I would imagine.
Yeah, I'm sure of it. Well, I can't say I saw this kind of performance coming, but we all know after 3 games, your opponents have more tape on you. They know what your tendencies are, and they start attacking you differently. And kudos to Coach Schiano and Rutgers. I mean, their game plan was solid, but it wasn't, I don't think, the game plan that impressed me. It was how they switched on the fly defensively after they were manhandled the first 3 drives. And I didn't think we adjusted to what they did, which is just makes me scratch my head, Nick.
Right, Mike, and that's the thing. I think that's when everybody, people, it's always funny. People get mad after games like that, and a lot of times I talk to people and they're like, I don't even know why I'm mad, but I'm just mad, and you're like, you wait a day or two and you're like, okay, I think I figured it out, and it's always the same. It's like they're not making adjustments in games, and I know that adjustments in games oftentimes are, it's BS. It's overblown. It's whatever. I mean, you can't completely change everything you're doing that you planned for a week in the middle of a game. You just can't do that. But at the same time, I think that what Schiano is doing there, and that's like what you're saying, Mike, I think that they're putting things in their heads throughout the week, probably as a staff, saying like, hey, if this happens to us, we'll do this. Like if X happens, we'll go to Y, right? Like if Y happens, we'll go to Z. They have contingencies, right? And I think that they're more pronounced. And Michigan, while they may have contingencies, I think Harbaugh's default is to never go to them, is to wait until the last possible second to see if we need to alter plan. And while there have been many times you could look back at Michigan wins and say they won the game because Harbaugh didn't deviate from the plan, there are also many times where you say they lost the game because he didn't deviate from the plan, or the game was far more difficult than it needed to be because he wouldn't adjust to things that were probably already built in. And I think that that's the difference. And those are the things that people scratch their heads about. And those are the things that it's stubbornness, and it's stubbornness to sort of like wince your way through a game and just be like, well, let's just get through it. It's like, it's easier sometimes to make life easier on yourself. You don't have to just grind through it, right? And I think that's the frustrating part.
Well, I do agree with Jim on one thing. Thank God for the red zone defense. They bent, but they didn't break. I mean, there was a lot to like what we saw from the defense. Your thoughts on their performance?
Yeah, I mean, they hung in there. I have to watch more of it. It's a little concerning still for me in the middle. I mean, I think that's the thing from this game that you take away. Rutgers rushes for almost 200 yards. And a lot of it came in the second half on those, power and counter reads where, Rutgers has a decent offensive line. It's not, the best thing you're going to see all year, but it's not bad either. It's better than it's been. And Michigan's front, I think, has problems. I think they have problems getting off blocks. I think other than Aiden, it's not consistent enough. And that's been a thing that we've seen in spots that they've been able to sort of get away with in the first couple games where other teams or other offenses are making mistakes. But in this one, like you said, Mike, I mean, Schiano, I thought Rutgers blew a lot of opportunities in this game, but the things that they did right were in the second half, they just went with what was working and they didn't go with anything else. And Michigan couldn't get off the block. They couldn't make a play in the front seven. That to me is concerning because that's the kind of thing that I think teams are going to do to Michigan. I think they're going to do everything they can to keep that defense on the field and wear that front seven out and make it so Michigan has to put the game in McNamara's hands at some point. Get into the third or fourth quarter, and even if we're down 10 or 14, if we're grinding on your defense and wearing you out and giving you the ball without much time, your quarterback's going to have to make plays. And for me, that's still concerning for Michigan because I think the linebackers are getting better. Not having Ross in that game hurts, but the front for me is still like, this is a big one here. And I know Wisconsin has issues, but like how they perform in a game like this is going to be a big test or a big, I guess, litmus or whatever you want to call it, because I haven't been wowed by the front yet. at all, and I'm still very TBD on how good they are, I guess, and that's a big question mark hanging there.
No, absolutely. I have to say, still, I'm pleasantly surprised with what we've seen from the defense. I mean, yes, questions.
Yeah, they're hanging in.
I mean, we had the questions on the front coming into the season, so I'm not surprised that we're still wondering if we're going to have issues the rest of the season. But it definitely, like most defenses, cannot be on the field as long as it was Saturday.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, you're still you wish you had, if you're Michigan, like one more Hutchinson in the front. Like, that's kind of what it feels like they're missing. One more guy who can, like, if Rutgers in that game isn't going to do anything toward him. They're going to run away from him. They're going to double him when they have to, and other teams are going to do the same thing. Indiana will do the same thing, right? These smart coach teams that know their talent is what it is, and you've got to scheme around it. If you're Michigan, you really you need that other, like, edge guy. I feel like sometimes, like, Ajabo is really close, right? He's right there. You need him to kind of make that get over the edge. Maybe Braden McGregor at some point down the road. But it feels like they need one more, like, playmaker in the front who can get off a block, beat a double, make a play. Just make a play in a situation to get you off the field, because that's what Hutchinson was giving them. I thought in the first couple of weeks, and it's sustainable to a degree because he's such a talented player, but it's also not sustainable to just ask him to bail you out every single series. And it feels like they need one or two more guys who just go make a play, because they're not loaded defensively. They're not going to dominate people, but they do have a couple guys who are talented enough to just go blow a play up and just go ruin a drive, get us the ball back, get off the field here, and we didn't see enough of that in the second half. And, that's the thing for me, where it's like, are there enough guys in that front seven that are going to be able to do it? We know Hutchinson can do it. Somebody else is going to have to step up here pretty quickly, because it's going to get harder and harder.
Well, from a philosophic standpoint, Nick, do you think that this is something that the offensive staff and Jim know about the defense, and maybe their reluctance to open it up, or their insistence on trying to run the ball is to cover for these guys?
I think that's probably a very safe bet. I think they totally understand a couple different things there, right? Like, the quarterback is limited. McNamara is not. This isn't Trevor Lawrence. Okay, he's not. He's not going to get a lot of stuff back for you if you make mistakes. So you've got to be sure to protect him a bit as he goes through it, but also your defense. Yeah, it's a hang in their defense. They're not. They're going to bring pressures. They're going to do different things and try to dictate pace, but it is very much a, don't give up easy stuff. Make things hard for the quarterback with his reads, hide our weaknesses, and get the hell off the field. I don't care what the stat sheet looks like at the end of the day. Like, I think that's what you're playing right now. And, I think Michigan, the way they're calling the game offensively, absolutely is impacted, I should say, by, where they're at defensively. And you can't reasonably look at anything, if you're a defensive coach on Michigan's roster right now, based on everything you know about where they were in January, everything you knew about where they were in the spring. They're getting better, but you can't lie to yourself either, right? So you've got to take that into account and understand that, you've got guys on defense that are kind of fighting through it right now. Some guys are learning on the fly. Some guys are getting better every time. Some guys you're learning, maybe they don't have it, and you need to go to somebody else behind them. I think that's still something that they're figuring out with their rotations and everything. And it's going to be interesting as we get into Big Ten play, Mike. Are we going to see some of the same guys getting like 50-50 reps where they're struggling and they're not doing anything? Or are we going to see somebody new? And I think that we've seen, that's been an issue in the past too. So all those things are there as you get into the harder part of the schedule, and we'll see kind of how the staff handles it.
Nick, was Rutgers a little bit better team than you thought?
They were about what I thought, actually. I thought that Rutgers, I saw the line before the game. I was joking with somebody. I don't bet or gamble. That's the one vice, Mike, that I've been able to successfully stay away from in my life. So I don't do it, but I was killing myself. It was like -20, or Michigan was a 20-point favorite or something. I'm like, I should have bet my house. There's no way they were going to hit 20 on that. I think Rutgers is a solid team. Schiano did a terrific job last year of bringing in all of those grad transfers. And I think the thing people forgot is they only really lost one this offseason. It was Mike Dwumfor, the Michigan transfer. They brought everybody back. The quarterback was back. Pacheco's a good football player, the back there. So they've got solid players, and Schiano's a good coach. And this is the best staff I think Rutgers has also ever had. This is the highest paid staff they've ever had. So this is not a joke team anymore. I think this is a solid, well-coached team that is not going to give you easy stuff. And for a coaching staff like Michigan that needs to find ways to get the easy stuff, you know what I mean? Like, they're going to make you work for it. And I think that it's a good test for this staff to go back, be honest with yourself and objective, and see where you made mistakes, learn from it, and fix it as you go forward. Don't be arrogant or whatever else, right? Understand that Schiano maybe got you on a couple, but, fix those, clean them up, move forward, and everything will be fine.
Well, up next is Wisconsin and Madison, and we all know we have not played well for a long time.
No.
I watched the Wisconsin-Notre Dame game on tape, and I even thought Notre Dame, they didn't look great. I mean, they took advantage of a lot of mistakes, especially late in the game. That game was not was a lot closer than that final score indicated. And my takeaway was the Wisconsin defensive line is scary. I mean, Notre Dame could not run the football. I think it was 7 or 8 sacks. They were just pounding both Notre Dame quarterbacks. So I think what's very obvious is Michigan cannot line up and play smash mouth against these guys Saturday.
You've got to take advantage of the space and the edges and get the ball to the perimeter and let your speed be the difference, because they have a good offensive line, a very good one, and it's going to be there. And I think in this game, there's nothing wrong with asking them to test their mettle against a really good, front and say, hey, we still think we can run the ball in this game. But yes, Mike, I mean, I totally agree to your point. You've got to have more stuff in there this week for the speed on the edge. Henning, we cannot see him come into the game, and every time he checks in, it's a gimmick play. Every time he checks in, it's a gadget. No, he has to be in the offense now. Like, these are things we're seeing. Like, it's little stuff, right? It's like people go back to the beginning of the year when Ronnie Bell gets hurt. Why is Caden Colasar the backup punt returner when the first time we see Henning touch a ball in a punt return, he nearly returns it for a touchdown? Like, you got to stop being so nervous with some of these guys and let them do their thing, I think. And they might surprise you, or at least, make you feel pretty good about it. And I think that that's what we need to see. We need to see a couple more chances on the edge. Doesn't have to be everything. Doesn't have to be 50 more. It just needs to be a couple more to keep people honest and, be able to go back to the things that you do really well between the tackles. Keep them honest and make those things, matter more in the third and fourth quarter. And I think that if you do that, you'll have a chance no matter what you're doing, this year. And, I think this is going to be a tough test, tougher than, like you said, Mike, tougher than that score probably indicates. Mertz didn't play well, but at the same time, Michigan has a lot to fix too. So this is a big game for Michigan. I don't care how it ended last week for Wisconsin. I don't care how it ended last week for Rutgers or whatever. This is a big one for Michigan to test themselves in a place that they haven't played well. For this team in this locker room, confidence and everything else, yeah, it's a huge week. And if you can get through it, boy, a lot of things look different. So, I think that that's the thing to remember here.
Yeah, and Wisconsin defensively, they are just very good. If anything, they give you the intermediate pass stuff and the short game. That's basically all Notre Dame did. I mean, they couldn't run the ball, so they were able to get it out underneath impressively. What this is also going to be is a barometer game for Cade, because the passing attack has to be somewhat successful this week.
Yeah, he's got to be sharper and faster with his reads. And I think this is one where you tell him you got to get him in these situations where, the scheme plays have to be really good. Like, you've got to be able to make those reads cleaner, quicker, get the ball out. If there's somebody underneath that's got to step on somebody, get it out, and let him, even if it's a 3 or 4 yard, whatever, let him catch it in space and run. That's your best option against teams like this when they're so aggressive up front. You got to get the ball out. And I don't have any concerns with him standing in there against pressure and throwing against, and not worried about getting hit. But it's the quickness and the processing where there's still times, I think, where the lag is there. And that's the thing where they got to work on this week is clean reads, get the ball out on time, in their hands with a chance to make a move. And I think you're in good shape if you can do that. So, that's the game plan, or that's what it should be this week. If it's anything else, it's going to be tough sledding, and I guess we'll see how it goes.
One of the things my inbox has been loaded up with since the game ended Saturday, Nick, were emails asking me why we're not giving J.J. McCarthy some playing time. just get him in there for a few series. I think that's such a dicey issue when you're trying to also build the confidence of your starting quarterback at the same time.
Right.
Do you think it's throwing a red flag up if you see McCarthy get some series as early as this week?
Well, no, I don't think it'd be a red flag because I think that, McNamara has to prove that, because like we talked about, I mean, when the offense, he was going to be the starter until the offense stopped moving the ball. They stopped moving the ball in this game. So, now as you go forward, you got to keep moving it. But I would also counter to people who say, like, you needed to see him in this Rutgers game. Like, what would have happened if they put him in the game in the third quarter or fourth quarter when it's up against it and the defense is struggling to stay out, to get off the field, and you call a pass on first down and it's incomplete, and you call a pass on second down and it's incomplete, and right, like, and then everyone's freaking out, and then what? Then everyone just says, well, screw this guy too. Like, I mean, like, that's no. Like, there are things through the flow of a game where you have to understand that. McCarthy's not really a run option either. He's a pretty light kid who you're not wanting to get hit a lot at the same time. Does he have a better arm? Yes. Is he quicker with his reads? Maybe. But at the same time, I think there was a lot more going on there that you have to make sure that he's in a good position, in a good situation, because he's still a freshman. I mean, you don't want to lose him. But at the same time, as you go forward now, you can't be afraid of that either. And I think that's the interesting, delicate sort of balance that you walk, where you can't just give the job to someone because he's a couple of years older and he makes a few less mistakes in practice, but he's not doing anything for you on the field in the game. He can't just keep the job, for that reason. And I think that, that's for them to decide in practice. We don't see practice, so, it's hard for us to sort of say what's going on there.
Well, final question before we let you get away, Nick. How Michigan has won the first three games had the fan base giddy. I think everyone was impressed, fair to say. And we know that was unrealistic. It was not going to keep going like that. After 4 games, has Michigan given you any reason to think they can be better than maybe that 8 or 9 win team that most of us thought they would be before the season?
I think they've given me reason to think they can get to that, to be 8 or 9 wins, but I don't know if I would say they've given me anything to say I think they could be better than that. I would say that, honestly, though, I think all things considered, Mike, I didn't think they'd be 4-0. I mean, like, if I'm looking back on August 1st, I did not think they would be 4-0. Like, I was like, I don't know what game they're going to lose in there, but I thought they'd lose one. I thought they were going to really struggle defensively, from an organizational standpoint, from all the things that would have been natural. I mean, I think that they were ahead of where I thought they would be defensively. They were better, or at least as good as they hoped they were going to be, I think, on the offensive line. And, they're cohesive and they're playing hard. So I think all the things that I said there are better than what I thought they were going to be on August 1st. And if you are a Michigan fan and you're honest with yourself today, they're better than what you thought they were going to be on August 1st too, and you have to remember that and understand that. I think people it's just part of how college football is today. You've got to keep context in mind and understand, where your team is at, measure it against itself. Stop measuring it against something that happened 25 years ago or something that you created in your mind about how this should go. It's not fair, and it's not fair to the players or the team either. And I think that's, you can be mad at the coaches, you can be mad at all that, but I mean, these ridiculous expectations that every Michigan quarterback needs to walk on the field and look like Johnny Unitas is just insane. And I mean, it's got to stop. At some point, maybe it will. It probably never will, but I mean, every coaching staff that comes in here shouldn't have to deal with that. And I think that's the stuff that's challenging. But at the same time, I understand the frustration too, because it's been a long, long time since this football team has done anything to give these fans anything to really, really be excited about. So I get both sides of it, but it's like, I think sometimes everybody needs to stop and breathe and remember where they were a month ago. And, it makes everything look a little bit better. And I think that's probably this situation. It could change on Saturday.
Oh, yeah.
And I guess we'll see how that goes. But right now, that would be my advice.
Well, we just have to, as fans, chill out until we see what happens on Saturday. That's why they play the game. So a lot to correct. Everyone agrees with that. So let's see what happens in Madison. Here with us on our game day segment has been Nick Baumgardner from The Athletic. Nick, always a pleasure to have you on the show. And we thank you for your time and look forward to having you back here later in the season.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. Anytime.
On Quick Hits today, the only injury Jim touched on at his presser Monday was that of Josh Ross. He is a probable for Saturday, and we need him back. We moved up to number 14 in the polls this week, and that's nice, but it doesn't mean much right now. On Thursday's Visitors Edition, our guest will be the radio play-by-play voice of the Badgers, Matt LePay, so make sure you tune in. That will do it for this week's Michigan Game Day edition. Thanks again to Nick Baumgardner from The Athletic for being our guest. Have a great Wolverine week, everyone. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Until Thursday, take care, and as always, go blue.
Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!